thank you so much for joining me on this chat and for being here. Our video with the Thar was just such a success, and I think most people had so many questions on their mind, and we thought it would be great to have you, Vijay, and you, Mr. Veluswamy, with us today to be able to just answer so many things that are on people's mind. Congratulations on the runaway success that the Thar has been so far by the reaction that it's getting from the people. So first, let's just begin with, the challenges of recreating an icon. The Thar had its own iconic history. There were so many issues around design, and I know, it's been a topic that's been burning, and I'm sure there are clarifications that you would like to make as well. So I'm going to let you kick off from there.
Sure. So Renuka, firstly, thanks so much for having Velu and me on your show. And we are really delighted that we have an opportunity to talk to you about the iconic Thar. A very appropriate question to begin with, which is what goes behind, in a sense, recreating an icon. It's really a challenge because you really need to balance out the strength of what the Thar has always been, bring that in, and at the same time make sure we take care of what we would want new introduction people who would want to come into the category for the first time. So I think we've been able to get that fine balance right, and we believe we've done a good job with that. We've been able to carry over the tough, rugged, the imagery of Thar being the true iconic off-road brand and product, and we've really modified it and refined it by taking it to another level. So be it the design, be it the interiors, be it the ride, be it the space, be it technology, all of that we've redefined while keeping the core DNA of being the best off-road SUV in the country. So I think that's one thing that we've been able to do in terms of recreating the country. And of course, I'm sure Velu, my colleague, will add to that. As you know, that he's the head of product development, and he and his team have played a very critical role in transforming what Kripa, who's our chief designer, to creating the products. I'm sure Velu will add to that.
So I know there's always a battle between design and engineering in most companies. There's always that tussle about engineering saying, hey, these are the safety norms, this is what we have to keep to, this is what's upcoming, and design wants, of course, everything that's beautiful and gorgeous. So was there that tussle as well over this product, Velu? And can you tell us, where there were like compromises that had to be made? I know there are upcoming safety norms as well, which play a huge part in design. So, were there challenges around that?
Thank you, Renuka, and my colleague Vijay. He also explained the technologies that go behind this vehicle, and it's an all-round performance that we were looking at. When it comes to an iconic brand like this, it helps us to reduce the tension between the design and engineering. It obviously gives a little bit more space for both of us because it's a longer bonnet and it's a little bit lifted up, high ground clearance. So you do have a little bit of tussle when it comes to packaging, so-called packaging engineering. Yes, a bit of ride and handling could be an issue, but that is not affecting the design portion of it. That is internal to the engineering. Between two engineering departments, you might have some tensions. Otherwise, it was a very nice work to give right proportion as well as right performance of the vehicle.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that ride handling in just a minute because that is always an issue with high ground clearance. But just before we get to that, since we're on the subject of safety, and it is a big concern and a big issue, and I'm glad it's becoming a bigger issue for Indian consumers because we weren't that focused on safety in our cars earlier, and I'm so glad that they now consumers are looking for this in every product. You've got your XUV 300 that's actually got fantastic safety ratings. So tell us about the Thar, the measures that were taken on safety, and what people can expect, because we have the upcoming frontal crash regulations that are now going to come into place as well this year. So can you talk to us a little bit more on the safety of the Thar and what people can look forward to? What is the safety ratings, if there are any things available on that as of now?
So Renuka, before Velu comes in and talks about what he and his team have done to engineer the product for safety, I'm just putting a rider for now. We won't talk about the safety rating. We're going to leave that for 2nd October.
Okay.
So Velu will tell you everything that we put into the vehicle to make sure, as you rightly said, safety is very, very important to M&M. But we will refrain from commenting on the star rating. Velu, you can go ahead and answer the question.
Absolutely. Also, as you know, Renuka, unless you start delivering the vehicle, you don't have the GNCAP rating. So,
Yeah.
Unless that is done, we are in the start of the production phase. So, but it meets all the regulatory requirements of the safety. So you have a frontal offset crash that you know well, and then you have pedestrian lower leg impact and then head injury. All three norms are coming, and our Thor meets ahead of its norms. 1st October is the implementation of the pedestrian norms, but we have developed it. Now, when you look at the safety for a car like this, it's you know the roof. We have a 3 variants, and we have to manage all the energy that goes. Whether it is 56 km per hour or 64 km per hour, you have to manage it with the frame. So you have basically a frame, and you have a body, and you have a roof. Yeah, when you crash it, the energies are going across. Now, after the crash, the passenger has to be intact and he has to come out. The door has to open. That's very simple. So that means the A-pillar area cannot crash anymore and cannot even have wrinkles of deformations, otherwise door will not open. The way we have managed it with a very high suspension travel to reroute the energy, impact energy from the front right long rail of the chassis to the cross members to the uniformly distributed way is what the new technique that we have deployed in this, along with the third generation chassis, and that helps us to meet very good rating for safety. That's
So another question is, because you have a soft top version and it is then openable, does that become a different set of challenges for meeting safety norms and regulations and ratings? Does that open up a whole new area of things that you have to look into?
So as long as you manage all your impact energies to the chassis, then you don't have much work or the differences whether you put a soft top or a hard top or a convertible. And that's what we have done. That was our primary objective, and that is what we have done.
Great. So I'm sure we can look forward to an incredibly safe Thar. But just coming back to that point where you were talking about ride handling. Now, it's two opposing things, because I noticed that you have a lifestyle variant and then you have the adventure one, where you're hoping to attract two different ends of consumers as well. Of course, the ones that were originally Thar enthusiasts, and now a new bunch of people that are probably more urban users for this kind of a vehicle. So, two questions there. One, are those both slightly differently engineered as far as suspension is concerned? And secondly, that high ground clearance that one needs for a serious off-roading vehicle vis-a-vis getting the ride handling balance is always a big challenge. So how did you manage that?
So I was thinking how I'm going to explain, but I didn't get the small model of the Thar, but I will use my XUV.
Okay.
I don't know. Basically, you have a vertical motion, and then you have a pitching motion, and you have a rolling motion. So when you have these three motions playing together, that's what happens in a on-road. The vertical motion is very critical in a urban city drive. Okay. And the rolling motion is very critical in a high-speed maneuver like 90 km per hour to 150, 60 km per hour. This car is quite capable. And the pitching motion is very critical when you have uneven roads and then bumps. Yeah. This is one set of problem that we need to handle. I'll explain how we were handling. Second set of handling problem is when you go to off-roading, you need the suspension to go down when the vehicle is lifted up. You need the suspension treble to be as large as possible, which in a way means a flexible suspension, a measure of articulation, ramp travel index or articulation index. That's what you meant very nicely. If you have to have a very flexible suspension, which means the rolling stiffness is less. That's how it means, right?
Yeah.
But when you have a rolling stiffness is less, and between 90 kilometers and 150 kilometers, you are going to roll the vehicle.
Yeah.
Correct? That's exactly precisely you are asking. So we did 4 measures to do. First, we brought the third generation chassis. The chassis is stiff. So the body is not rolling over the wheel, but over the chassis. The chassis is stiff. The chassis has to be stiff. So we increased the bending stiffness and torsional stiffness of the chassis by about 108% and 103%. So the chassis is stiff. So the body starts rolling over the chassis now. Now you have vertical movement for the urban rollers to take care of. So we brought double wishbone independent coil spring in the front and multi-link panhard rod suspension again coil spring. So that takes care of your vertical, very smooth ride. Now that has got a very the stiffness, right? Stiffness problem.
Yeah.
Now you can handle this problem in 2 ways. Whether you can have a low suspension spring rate, but also the forces are lower. If you bring down the CG, if you bring little bit up the roll center, then the arm length that you are bringing down, correct? That's precisely that we did. So we optimized the roll center on which the body rolls on the chassis, and the CG we brought it down. So we reduced the rolling forces, rolling moments, and then got it right. So when you do that, you can also have a spring which is 236 millimeter travel. So you have a large travel for the ram power or articulation index, and you have a very nice vertical suspension and also a rollover. So the rolling vertical movements all are taken care by these measures that we did. The other thing is, how do you then, if you have a very soft spring, then you have to take care of the pitching, because pitching is typically the cars have very high rear vehicle weight. If you have a 2,200 kilos, you have 1,500, 600 kilos in the rear and 1,200 kilos in the front, something like that you have, correct? That is that the heavy vehicle weight will move up and down. Okay, the first thing that we did was to redistribute the ratio of vehicle, the rear axle weight to front axle weight from 1.6 to 1.3. You have a new powertrain, you have a very new lightweight powertrain, lightweight chassis, lightweight body, and then we beautifully redistributed. It's a recipe of multiple things came together, like our CEO explained. The technology, the proportion of the vehicle, and the track and wheelbase, all being came together, the suspension and the proportion together. So that's the formula for it.
Great. So I think that there's more detail and explanation than I think any of us imagined. So a lot of work that we've seen that gone in there. But the thing that you didn't answer was, is it different for like when you say lifestyle variant and you say adventure variant? Have you kept a different balance over there in the suspension of the two?
Both with the you have an R16 inch tire and you have an R18 inch tire.
Correct.
And you know the aspect ratio of tires are different. For a lower aspect ratio, it's a very stiff tire. Then you have a very a lighter spring and damper accordingly.
Spring rates, etc., have all been adjusted for
to have the same performance.
All right. Great. So that's because that's been a big question on a lot of people's mind, So is it great for urban use? Can we really now use the Thar in urban conditions? So that's one question that we've been getting so much of from all the consumers. So this is great for them to know that, yes, that the lifestyle version does, adapt better to city conditions. So if you're going to do mild off-roading, that's the variant you should go for.
Well, I still remember, Renuka, I must say, when our CEO came to our test track, he drove first Thar, he drove, and he said, Velu, this vehicle will go to urban customers as well as adventurers, off-roaders. It is very, very important that we get all the technical parameters as satisfied for the adventurers as well as for the urban dwellers. So that's how it was as before as 6 months he came and he drove, and he has been the champion for Scorpio when we released together. I was working on the engine side on Scorpio and he was the brand chief for the Scorpio. I think the pair again is repeating now.
It's a good combination. It's a damn good combination. Scorpio was one of the first cars that I owned, and I loved it.
Yeah, so I think Renuka, just to kind of reiterate what Velu said, from a consumer's point of view, the vehicles are tuned for the applications on the variants that they would be used for. So clearly, people who want to use the, let's say, gasoline automatic for urban, the ride handling ability of that would be different from a person who would buy a manual off-roading, the enthusiast variant. So the suspensions, ride handlings have been tuned for that. Velu's consciously taken care of that.
Great. Like someone asked me the other day, so I told them, I said, it's like the boyfriend that your parents really don't approve of because it's not perfect, but you love it any which way, So I think this is the way I look at it, yeah. So, just moving on from there, again, coming to this urban use, a lot of people have asked that why not a 5-door variant, so that would have made usage in urban conditions a little more practical. Was that ever in consideration? Will you be considering it in the future? And was it such a big challenge that you didn't want to include one at this point? Because since you are going for 2 distinctions, so that's a big question on people's minds.
Renuka, I think, of course, it's a strategy question that you're asking. And, at this stage, I don't think I want to get into talking too much details about that. But I think our objective first was Thar in its form. And, let's go back a little bit into history, right? Whether you look at coming from the CJ to the MM to the Classic to the Thar, all that has been an evolution of a certain size, form factor, balance, as Velu rightly said, between track, wheelbase, overall length. So our objective was to recreate the icon. And obviously, the first step in that direction was to create the Thar in its current form of a 3-door. I think that's a good starting point with which we are in. Who knows how the future will play out? I think let's just watch the space as we go forward.
So since you said starting point, I think there's more to come then, because when you start, you always go step by step.
I leave that to your interpretation, but for now, we are clear Thar is a 3-door that we have.
Okay. And just another question, that since you have the Thar, it is iconic, its status. Now, you expand on that range, like you have a tie-up with Ford. Could we see things like the Bronco, coming in the future? Is there a plan to sort of expand this iconic status into other different iconic products as well?
Renuka, again, I think that's a difficult one to answer for now, and especially given that we are still awaiting certain clearances as far as the joint venture is concerned. So at this stage, won't be able to comment on that.
Okay, let's forget the joint venture, but let's talk about you internally wanting to now sort of expand in this direction, because it is SUV that is a strength.
Oh, yeah, of course. So Renuka, in that sense, let me put it to say that if there is a brand in Mahindra's portfolio that is core to our DNA, it is Thar.
Okay.
And that's why when I said that this is a good starting point, I meant it in that sense. So it's not necessarily just about a 3-door or a 5-door. It is core to our brand. It is what Mahindra is about. And hence, Thar will always have a very, very key role to play in our portfolio from a product strategy and from a brand strategy point of
view. Okay. Talking about, are you going to export? I mean, coming to the brand side of it, are you also, is there plans to export Thar? How many markets are you looking at? Has that been decided yet?
Not yet, Renuka. I think we are a little tense at the moment. Obviously, to begin with the launch, the focus.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat that answer, Vijay, because we lost you there for a minute.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So Renuka, on the export markets, a little early to comment on. We are looking at multiple options, but to begin with, the focus would first be to leverage and fulfill the opportunity in the domestic market, and then of course we will open it up to many other countries.
Okay.
We have some of our strong markets across the globe, and we will take this product.
Okay, and it's the first time you've offered it with a hardtop. So was there a challenge in developing that? That's I'm going to go it stage by stage because there's so many questions on this hard top. So, Velu, was it a consideration that, okay, this is too tough, let's just keep it to soft top or open? So was a hard top a big challenge, and even the materials of the hard top?
So it is, Renuka, it is challenge because you're engineering three roof versions. I think it's not the first time, but there are examples there. It's the challenge was to get it for our region. Yes, when you say it is hard top, it is not flexible, and therefore the ceiling becomes difficult. So you have an air ceiling for the noise. When the car goes over 150 km per hour, the wind is at 150 km per hour, and you have a storm at 150 km per hour. You know how gushy the wind.
Yeah.
You know that. So you have to seal it, and then the rain and the air and dust and all this, and then
Even the
therefore
weight, right? It affects the weight,
it,
the top heaviness of, yeah.
and the body has to move together. We don't want
Legs.
relative movements at high speeds, and it affects the handling and there's quick noises. We don't want any of this. It is a bit tough, and we managed it, and it is it yeah, you have solutions, and we have to get the sealing technology and fastening technology at right places, and then we could manage it.
So since you are planning to export this as well, also safety regulations, because being different in different countries, with the hard top, the soft top, rollover, there's a lot of things that need to be considered on the safety aspect as well. So will there be various engineered versions of this, or will this be the one that is exported and it's ready for whatever it needs to be ready for?
As you know, as we release it to the different markets, we will answer it because it depends on the market that we release it. But for the domestic version that we have, and it meets all the requirements that we set out to meet and the regulators, and we meet beyond what regulations demand.
Often, coming to the safety regulation in our country, often regulations are just changed. And suddenly we realize there's a deadline for a regulation when a product has been planned a while ago. So how challenging is this really for, especially even design and engineering? Because sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board when you suddenly realize, okay, now there's a new frontal, there's a new deadline for frontal impact. So, because we've been talking to a lot of manufacturers about this, that people are now talking about, automotive regulation having a certain path, certain timelines, and what's the ideal timeline? Because I know products get planned often 3 years, 5 years in advance, So, what is the ideal scenario in your mind?
It's nowadays surprise is a way of life. When you have gasoline, when you have automatic, and when you have a convertible, and that's my life. Yeah. And when you are engineering it, and then you have a soft top, diesel, automatic, and manual, all the stuffs, different variants. You get BS6.
Yeah.
Gasoline and diesel. It's not easy. Yeah, you are comparing with the BS4. BS4, is
2 worlds apart. Yeah.
2 worlds across. When you do this in today's new products, or equivalent to, I would say, two product in parallel development. Is the single product development, is the kind of variants that customers are expecting, the kind of regulations that we need to meet. If you put in a single product like the Thor, if I were to develop 10 years ago, it will be, I can develop two products. And that's the effort that we are comparing. Now, when regulations change, when something changes like this, it really puts our team into back foot, but the team wins which has the agility, And
well, you've done a great job with getting BS6 there, both diesel and petrol. So yeah, kudos for that. I mean, a lot of people have struggled with it. So you've been there and right up front and center. So congratulations, and really nice engine, that we've driven in the Thar. I personally still to drive the petrol, but enjoyed the diesel. So, great work on that front.
Our CEO was very sure 6 months ago when he came and he drove. I never imagined this 2-liter is driving like this. And he said, 2-liter automatic convertible is my first choice. That was his personal choice. I'm not sure what he has booked in.
Okay.
Which number queue he is in. So I am negotiating with him for my number queue, you know.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people. I mean, a lot of interest that we've also seen over the product over a period of time. Another two questions that I had on the rear seat, like when we have the wheel arch, and I noticed that the wheel arch on the rear kind of intrudes a lot into the seat space. Was there ever? I mean, could it have been engineered a little different to have the seat extend over those arches, just so that you get more bench space? Why was it a safety issue? Why was there a reason that was not done? So different
It's not
questions.
a safety issue, as you know, Renuka. Two people comfortably can sit in the rear,
Yeah,
as you also demonstrated in your video. The wheel arch gives the suspension movement, space for our suspension movement. Now, if you have to put a seat over it, then you have to raise the rear seat. And that means you are raising the CG. That means you are affecting the roll behavior of the vehicle. It's well thought out what customer needs to get it. We thought when you are giving a 150 bhp engine and 150 kilometer per hour speed capability, the what matters is the all-round performance of the vehicle. We are very sure that this customer will love these two seats in the rear. And additional one more seat, I'm not sure whether he will love it over this all-round performance. So, raising it and making it uncomfortable in rolling.
Yeah, and last question that I'm going to ask you, the hardcore off-roaders have always been asking us and wanting to see that, are the off-road credentials of this, because they see a lifestyle and they see an adventure variant. So on the adventure variant, have the off-road credentials of it, the 4x4 credentials, improved? Have you made changes to make it better than before? Things like wheel articulation, ramp over, breakover angles on the Thar. How much of that has changed, and is it better than before?
Oh, it's wow, lot better. So the first thing is the weight is the same. Instead of PS6 crash, and all the features and the power upgrade that we did, the weight is the same. So we significantly reduced the weight in order to uh, enhance the performance. Second, the off-roading capability, what is called as the torque traction of the vehicle, 33% increase.
Wow. Okay. Amazing.
33% increase over the, it's a different vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you give, yeah. So when you give that 33% increase, then you have to give an commensurate all other off-roading parameters improvements, right? Whether it is water wading depth, you get it at 650 millimeters. And I'm told the old Thar is 500 millimeters, but I've seen videos even that going to 650. But this Thar, new Thar, you see it about a meter. The video that I saw, a meter, it was a meter. But 650 is about 150 millimeter more than the current. The other thing that we see is the breakover angle is significantly increased to 27. 24 earlier it is 27, so you can cross over the hurdles. Earlier we had a departure angle of 31.6 degrees, and we have now 36.8 degrees minimum. So it's a very significant. And the approach angle is over 40, it doesn't matter, it's 42, 43, it doesn't matter at all. So we have significantly increased. On the ground clearance, we have increased by 10% from 200 to 222 with the Hayden. So ground clearance increased, approach angle matched, breakover angle increased significantly, departure angle increased significantly, water fording depth increased significantly. Of course, you have 255 tire. So it's an all-round improvement. Improvement in NVH, improvement in squeak and rattle, as our CEO said, Vijay said. We also improved the space. We also improved the ergonomics inside. Yeah, it's multiple.
The last question, because this is one that has popped up to us like 100 times over, the hard top. Removing it, how easy is it? How difficult is it? Can people remove and refit it? Has been a big question on people's minds.
So there are two parts to it. Can this be removed and fitted? Yes, it can be removed and fitted in dealership by expert people. As I throughout the discussion, we discussed about the need for the body to be united with the base vehicle, or the high speeds and the sealing performances. So we don't recommend to be removed without the right tools, because the body has to be lifted. It's a little bit heavy, and then therefore it's not like a flexible body, and then therefore it's a heavy. It doesn't follow as easily if you don't properly drop it and torque it. So our advice is not to remove.
Okay, and how long approximately, like say someone needed to remove that hardtop, would it be a long procedure at the dealership or would it be a relatively easy procedure?
So this is when we launch October 2, we are going to release this procedure, and there will be a video, and all these sessions will be there for our dealership mechanics. One can always look at it, and then that point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being with us. We wish you every success for October 2nd for the Thar, and looking forward to taking it hardcore off-roading sometime soon to check out all those credentials. But thank you for joining us and answering all our questions today. It's a pleasure being with both of you.
Thank you, Renuka. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renuka. Thank you so much.